Well, all 32 teams have played at least 8 games, meaning we're officially into the second half of the 2013 NFL season. The Week 10 lines have been posted on BETDAQ. I'd like to go through a few of them now. Starting with the Seattle Seahawks visiting the Atlanta Falcons. Seattle a 6-point favorite, 44.5 the total on BETDAQ. The wheels have officially come off in Atlanta. The Falcons are 2-6, coming off back-to-back ugly losses to the Arizona Cardinals and the Carolina Panthers. The defense has been a problem all season. Indeed, they've allowed 27 or more points in 5 of their last 6 games. But recently, the offense has become a big problem as well. Now, most of that's due to injuries, of course. Julio Jones and Roddy White have missed the last couple of games. Jones is out for the rest of the season. White is expected back any week now, maybe this week, but he hasn't been himself all season after suffering that ankle injury in the preseason. So Matt Ryan has been stripped of some weapons. He hasn't gotten good play from the offensive line. And as a result, 7 interceptions over the last 2 weeks from Matt Ryan, who is a guy who normally prides himself in taking care of the football. The Falcons have only combined for 23 points in those 2 games. Again, losses to the Cardinals and Panthers. They lost both those games by 14 points or more. So tough to trust them against the Seattle Seahawks, one of the better teams in the NFC. However, Seattle haven't been playing well themselves lately. They nearly lost to the winless Tampa Bay Bucks at home last week. Seattle nearly always wins and nearly always covers at home, but fell behind 21-0 to the Bucks and their rookie quarterback Mike Glennon. They did pull that game out in overtime, but just a week before last, they produced only 135 yards of total offense against the St. Louis Rams, a team that now sit at 3-6. So the Seahawks have struggled against some bad teams over the last 2 weeks, going on the road where traditionally they're not as good as they are at home. A 6-point favorite here. I think a lot of people are going to be on Seattle. Obviously, it's early in the week. Here it's only Tuesday, so it's a little early to see the trends develop. We have some early trends developing, obviously, but over the next 2 days, we'll get to see really where the money is flowing on these games, and I fully expect there to be a lot of money in the Seattle direction. But how do you trust Atlanta after what we've seen over the last couple of weeks? Going to be very, very difficult, but I will be keeping an eye on that game because, as I said, Seattle has been struggling, even though they've been winning. The Falcons have just been struggling. Talk about another game, the Cincinnati Bengals going on the road to face the Baltimore Ravens. This game huge in the AFC North. Should Baltimore win this game, the AFC North will be really up for grabs. Bengals right now in first place in the division, but they just lost their 3rd game last Thursday night to the Miami Dolphins. They still have a 2-game lead on both the Ravens and the Cleveland Browns, who are tied at 3-5. Pittsburgh Steelers a game back of them at 2-6. Now, the Ravens, Browns, and Steelers have all been disappointments this season, but again, if the Ravens can pull out a win over the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday, the Bengals will have 4 losses. They'll only be a game ahead of Baltimore, a game ahead of Cleveland potentially, depending on what happens on Sunday, and again, potentially 2 games ahead of Pittsburgh Steelers, depending on what happens on Sundays there as well. So no team in the North is out of it should Cincinnati lose. The Bengals a 1-point favorite on BETDAQ, 44 is the total. Baltimore Ravens have not been playing well. They lost to the Cleveland Browns last week. The Bengals have been good for most of the season. Now, do you fully trust this offense? They look just like they looked over the last couple of seasons. They entered the New York Jets game a couple of weeks ago, ranked 22nd in the league in total offense, hung 49 points on the New York Jets, and then went back to their middling selves last Thursday night against the Miami Dolphins, only producing 20 points against the Dolphins and failing to move the ball for most of that game. The Ravens have gotten it together on defense. Since that Week 1 meltdown in Denver, they now rank in the top half of the league in total yards allowed, points allowed. And again, Cincinnati has trouble occasionally offensively. This game is in Baltimore. Bengals, as we said, a 1-point favorite on BETDAQ. I have an early, funny feeling that the Baltimore Ravens might be able to take care of business at home this Sunday. We shall see. Another game I'd like to talk about, maybe one of the best games of the week, for sure 2 of the NFL's best defenses facing off in San Francisco when the Panthers travel out there to face the 49ers. San Francisco a 6.5-point favorite on BETDAQ. And look, it's tough to bet against the Niners after what we've seen out of them recently. 5 consecutive wins. They really have it rolling since they've returned to the power running of Frank Gore. Colin Kaepernick was extremely impressive in Week 1, throwing for over 400 yards against the Green Bay Packers. But over the next 2 games, it seems like the 49ers lost their offensive identity a little bit. They lost both games. But as we said, they have now turned it around. 5 straight wins, playing well on both sides of the ball. Carolina on an impressive streak themselves. The Panthers have won 4 straight games. All 4 of those wins have come by 15 points or more. Panthers currently second in the NFL in points allowed. This defense really playing well. Only thing that concerns me with Carolina in this spot, and again, they're getting 6.5 points, and this is going to be a relatively low-scoring game. The total now sitting at 42.5 on BETDAQ, so it's, we don't expect a whole lot of points. As I said, these 2 of the best defenses in the league. But the thing that concerns me a bit here with Carolina is you look at their 4-game win streak, you look at who they've beaten. As a matter of fact, you look at their 5 wins this season. The last 4 games, which again, Carolina, they've been extremely impressive. All you can do is play the teams on your schedule, and Carolina has won all 4 of these games by 15 points or more, so it's not like they've been squeaking by. But still, those wins were against Minnesota, the St. Louis Rams, the Tampa Bay Bucks, and the Atlanta Falcons, who we just talked about, have really been struggling. The St. Louis Rams, the best team of the bunch, the only one of those teams to have won at least 3 games, and they sit at 3-6. The Panthers' other win was against the New York Giants, another bad team, so they've yet to beat a good team this season. Going on the road, facing the San Francisco 49ers, just not sure Carolina is good enough offensively to tackle this challenge. Panthers have been extremely one-dimensional offensively this year. They have not passed the football very well at all. Currently 30th in the league in pass yards per game. And last week, even though they easily handled the Atlanta Falcons, 2 first-half interceptions by Cam Newton kept the Falcons in the game for longer than they should have been in it. Again, the Panthers ended up rolling to victory in the second half. Now, full disclosure, I was on Atlanta last week plus 9.5 on the road in Carolina, and I believe I used a similar argument. I said something like, I'm just not sure the Panthers' offense is good enough right now to cover a number like this. And again, I'm saying here, just not sure Carolina is good enough on offense to go on the road and beat or stay within 6.5 of the San Francisco 49ers. So fair warning, I was wrong last week about this. There's a chance that I continue to underestimate the Carolina Panthers, but really looking forward to this game. Should be one of the best games of this Week 10. Another game that should be interesting for a variety of reasons. The Denver Broncos traveling to San Diego to face their division rival Chargers. Broncos a 7-point favorite on BETDAQ. 57 the total in this game. We do expect some points. Now, John Fox, Denver coach, you probably heard, 5-6 days ago now, apparently he was feeling some strange tingling, went to the hospital, and has now had heart surgery. So Fox will be out for several weeks at least, potentially the rest of the season. Jack Del Rio, defensive coordinator, was promoted to interim head coach. Del Rio, of course, with plenty of head coaching experience, coached for a long time in Jacksonville, so I don't expect that to be much of a problem, the transition. And, the most important guy on that team is not the head coach. It is Peyton Manning. Should something happen to Peyton Manning, the Broncos might be in serious trouble. They can sustain, I think, something happening to John Fox or even Jack Del Rio. But again, they are 7-point favorites on the road against San Diego Chargers, and the Chargers are very good on offense this season. Mike McCoy has done a great job rejuvenating the career of Phillip Rivers. Rivers averaging 300 pass yards per game on the dot. That is 4th best in the NFL. And he's facing a Denver secondary that allows exactly 299, to be specific, 299.1 pass yards per game. So the Chargers average 300 pass yards per game. The Broncos allow 299 pass yards per game. That is not a good combination for Denver. And you have the opportunity here to back a home dog against a division rival, knowing that that home team, that home underdog, is going to be able to move the ball at will and put up a lot of points. However, the team you'd be betting against is the Denver Broncos. The Broncos still on a historic pace offensively. They average 42.9 points per game. They're first in the league in most major offensive categories except for rushing yards. Peyton Manning has been spectacular. And we talked about Denver's struggles on defense. The Chargers aren't much better on the defensive side of the ball. San Diego, 28th in total yards allowed, 27th in pass yards allowed. So expect Peyton Manning to go to work on that San Diego secondary. Denver coming off a bye, so they should be rested and a little healthier maybe than they were over the last couple of games. Manning, to me, has looked banged up over the last couple of weeks. We'll see if he looks a little healthier on Sunday in San Diego. I have an early lean towards the Denver Broncos in that game. Final game I'd like to discuss quickly. The Dallas Cowboys going on the road to face the New Orleans Saints. Really looking forward to this game. Should be exciting. Saints a 7-point favorite on BETDAQ. 53.5 the total. Cowboys have been a money-making machine this season. 7-2 against the spread. They were 7-1 before last week. They struggled to beat the Minnesota Vikings, failing to cover a double-digit number. Cowboys are a little unusual. Statistically, they're terrible on defense. 31st in total defense, meaning yards allowed, also 31st in pass defense, but they've played some really good games. Just a couple of weeks ago, holding the Philadelphia Eagles to only 3 points. The Eagles, a top 5 offense. So never know really what to expect from Dallas, and same goes true with their offense. We saw them put up 48 points against the Denver Broncos 4 or 5 weeks ago, and then 2 straight bad offensive performances. One of those, or actually they got away with wins in both of them, but one of those against the Washington Redskins, they still topped 30 points because some plays on special teams and from their defense. But then the offense came back alive, of course, against the Detroit Lions and struggled last week against Minnesota. Saints have been good defensively this year, 4th in the league in yards allowed, 4th in the league in points allowed. Saints are coming off a loss to the New England Patriots. So it'll be interesting to see in this game. Saints didn't lose to the Patriots, did they? The Saints are coming off a loss to the New York Jets. You see, we're 10 minutes into this video now. Sometimes I catch myself here. Saints, of course, lost on the road to the New York Jets. Saints lost to the New England Patriots earlier this season. Both of the Saints' losses have come to AFC East opponents. But the Saints, with that Drew Brees and that passing game, the Saints once again top 5 in the NFL in yards per game, pass yards per game. We mentioned the Dallas secondary really struggling. Only one team in the NFL allowing more pass yards than the Dallas Cowboys this season. And the Saints so good in the Superdome, 20-4 against the spread in their last 24 home games, despite being favored in 22 of those 24 home games. Very, very tough to bet against the Saints at home, and I don't think I'll be doing it this week. I'll either be staying away from this game or backing the Saints, and I have a strong lean towards backing the Saints. But again, the Cowboys 7-2 against the spread this year, so be very careful about underestimating that team. Rob Ryan, of course, was fired as defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys after last season. He's taken over the Saints, and as we mentioned, the Saints 4th in the NFL in points allowed. A lot of credit has to go to Rob Ryan because in 2012, you remember, the Saints allowed more yardage than any defense in NFL history, and there really weren't a whole lot of personnel changes. So Ryan has changed the scheme, especially in the front 7. Saints now predominantly running a 3-4, which was a change from what they were doing in years past. And it has worked. As I said, Saints been playing very well on defense, but they struggled against the run last week against the Jets. Chris Ivory, their former teammate, running for 139 tough yards, really ran it right at the New Orleans defense. But Dallas doesn't have that dimension. You know, DeMarco Murray has been in and out of the lineup. The Cowboys, one of the worst rushing teams in the NFL. They rely on the right arm of Tony Romo, and I'm just not sure Romo is going to be able to outduel Drew Brees in the Superdome. So again, I do have an early lean towards New Orleans -7 in that game. Of course, we'll be previewing all these games throughout the week here on BETDAQ NFL, so we do hope you check back, but those are just a few that caught my eye here upon first glance of the lines. If you have any way to, if you would like to reach us at any time, John@BETDAQ NFL is my email address, JOHN@BETDAQNFL.com. You can also follow us on Twitter @BETDAQ NFL. Feedback, suggestions in regards to the site or any component of the site, absolutely welcome. If you send me an email, I will respond to it. Until then, for BETDAQ NFL, I'm John Arnette.